Alright guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and today we are going to be talking about the new injector upgrades that are coming out for the B58. Yet again, I have to admit that I was wrong because I didn't really think that this was going to be happening anytime soon. And just like we saw some new TU high pressure fuel pump upgrades being announced, now we're also seeing injectors for the TU coming out, as well as injectors for the Gen 1 B58. Now, a lot of you have probably seen some of the recent social media posts and things like that, and maybe you're wondering, is this even worth it for my build? Does it make sense to go this route? So in this video, I'll give you guys all of the details that I have so that you'll be able to make that decision for yourself. So hopefully you find this video useful. Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future. So the injectors that we're talking about today come from a company called XDI or Extreme DI. And from their About Me page, you can see a lot of details about this company. In particular, it's actually founded and owned by a Bosch Motorsports engineer. So the person that created this company was actually one of the engineers that developed high pressure fuel systems for race teams and worked with Bosch for their different fuel programs. So it's pretty cool to see that somebody that was really deep on the racing side is active and a part of this community, and in particular running this company that's creating some high pressure fuel upgrades for, the consumers. Now, if you look through their catalog, you can see that they make parts for a bunch of different vehicles. They make them for other platforms like Mercedes, Ford, Chevy, Audi, so lots of different upgrades on the market. And basically, they create high pressure fuel pump upgrades, injector upgrades, and they're slowly working into low pressure fuel pump upgrades as well. So their goal is basically to present an all around solution for these platforms to upgrade your fuel system and maintain it on DI only. Now, obviously, being an engineer that worked in this space, he's a big fan of the DI systems, particularly because they are extremely efficient. They give you good drivability, good response, and just a really clean burn. So that's why direct injection has been the latest and greatest in fuel technology. Even though a lot of cars are beginning to incorporate port injection for various reasons, it's really a good idea to stick with direct injection only if at all possible with your goals. So as a part of this strategy, they have now announced that they're going to have some upgraded injectors available for the B58. Now, these are upgraded OEM cores, so they basically start with a regular OEM injector and modify it so that it can flow more. So that means that this is still going to be rated for the same 250 bar for a Gen 1 B58 and 400 bar for a Gen 2, and it'll be designed to run at your high pressure fuel system's standard fuel pressure. So for a Gen 1, that's 200 bar, and for a Gen 2, that's 350 bar. Now, the good news is on the Gen 1, their injectors are rated for an additional 75% flow. So the Gen 1 has already shown that the stock injectors can flow north of 600 to 650 horsepower. So in theory, these injectors could run probably 1,000 horsepower just on their own. Now, on the other hand, the Gen 2s are only rated to flow an additional 13% over stock, which is a little bit disappointing, and I did reach out to them to understand why. Basically, the big challenge here is that these new injectors for the TU engine are a brand new injector technology. Now, you guys have probably seen a lot of other cars are running with this higher pressure fuel system, running the same TU pumps, running injectors that are rated for the same fuel pressure. So this is basically the latest and greatest from Bosch. And because of that, they really have to start from scratch in order to develop their strategy for modifying the injectors to safely flow more fuel. So right now, they're really just cracking into the details to figure out how much opportunity there is. And that's why this first run is going to flow just an additional 13%. But their goal is, as they continue to learn and develop more in the R&D space for these injectors, they should be able to come out with higher flowing options later on. But for now, this is really what we get, and you're not really going to see much improvement over that from other companies. Now, regardless, you're going to need some tuning changes to take advantage of these injectors. Nothing is available off the shelf right now. They did mention that they are working with boot mode and MHD to get this as a tick box option. So hopefully, if you put this on an off the shelf map, you'll have a checkbox where you can turn that on and enable it to work with the higher flowing fuel injectors. But for now, you're going to require a custom map. So if you guys are thinking about going this route, you're going to need a custom tune, and make sure you find a tuner that's comfortable with the settings that are needed to run these injectors. Now, I know a lot of people are also wondering if these are going to be more reliable than the stock injectors. And like I said, they are starting with a stock OEM core, but they do a lot of testing on these injectors to make sure that they're optimized as possible. They actually use a real Bosch test bench, and so this is equipment that's like over $200,000, extremely expensive, but it's designed to run the injectors through various setups that can match the circumstances you would actually drive it in. So you guys might see a lot of companies that do injector testing, but they run it at extremely low pressures because most off-the-shelf test setups don't run at the pressures that our cars run at. They can actually run it at the 200 bar or 350 bar that you're going to experience in your high-pressure fuel system. So they can test it in a true operating scenario, which is really key here. They're also making sure that all of the injectors that are provided in a kit are all flow matched. So that means that they'll be within plus or minus 0.5% of each other. So that makes sure that you're getting a nice consistent flow across all of your cylinders, and every order will come with the documentation to show what the test results were so that you know your injectors were tested to work together safely. So it's really kind of like what you would typically get when you order aftermarket injectors. You don't usually get this kind of information with an OEM injector. So that should be able to give you a lot more reassurance if you go this route. Now, these are available for pre-sale right now. They've got the pricing on their website, so you can see what that looks like. It's almost $2,000, so you'll really have to make sure this is the route that you want to go down. I know a lot of people have asked me, again, is it even worth it? Are we hitting the injector limits yet? Should I go port injection instead and things like that? And I think this is another one of those cases where we'll have to see what the results show when people really push them on this platform. They haven't posted a lot of dynos or anything that tells us how far we can really push these injectors. Like I said, in theory, these could flow like 1,000 horsepower if they're actually 75% more flow than stock. But keep in mind that this is not like a really static number and something that really needs to be tested. Especially when you get that high in the horsepower range, you have such a short window of time to spray your fuel in the cylinder, at 6,000, 7,000 RPM and trying to flow enough for 1,000 horsepower. We just don't really know how well it's going to work in those scenarios where it's really being stressed. They are starting to put these in some different vehicles, and you can even see in our Facebook group, some people have posted some, initial pictures showing that they're going to be trying this out with their tuner. So we're excited to see what that looks like. Hopefully they're really going to push it, because I think that's one of the big questions. For one, what is that actual limit? And secondly, is this even a limit that we need to be concerned about? Right now, our maximum high pressure fuel pump setup is basically a Dorch Stage 2 with the stock injectors. And it's been a little bit annoying for me, because something that I've really wished we had is a logging parameter for injector timing. And for those of you that aren't familiar, it's basically telling you how long that injector is open for a certain amount of milliseconds or whatever when it's actually spraying fuel. And this was something that I used on previous platforms to get a good idea of when I was approaching the limits of my fuel system. Because if those injectors are open for too long, then the high pressure fuel pump won't be able to kind of backfill the fuel behind it, and fuel pressure will drop. So that gives you a good idea if you're kind of hitting the limits of your fuel system, whether it's your injectors or whatever, and it's time for another upgrade. So that's just not something that we have available. I've talked to a lot of tuners that do feel like we are hitting the injector limits in a lot of scenarios. So in those cases, it definitely would make sense to upgrade. But a lot of other people are also saying they feel like they're hitting the limits of the Dorch Stage 2 first. And it's not just horsepower. It also depends on ethanol content and things like that. So there are just a lot of variables that come into play here where I feel like we really need to see somebody push it to the limit with just the Dorch Stage 2. And then maybe when these new spool pumps come out, we can see if people can push them with those higher flowing pumps and how much farther we can go without adding port injection. Ultimately, that's always the goal if you want to keep things simple, like a nice, clean daily driver. If you stick with DI only, that's pretty much always the best option if possible. But there's always going to be a limit where port injection and auxiliary fueling will make more sense. So, yeah, I think just, again, we'll kind of have to see what the test results show once more people out in the field actually get them. Hopefully some of these R&D guys really push their cars, but I think some people might even still be stock turbo or whatever, where we might not see it push 700 plus horsepower anytime soon. So if you're like me, just be patient. If you aren't and you're really eager to get it going, feel free to jump on that pre-order. I'll put a link down in the description to where you can get all of those details. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Again, a huge shout out to XDI for responding to my emails and giving me this information. I did kind of want to wait until the end of the week for some more of the pre-sale stuff to come out before making this video. And yeah, I'm really just eager to see what those test results show. So hopefully we get that data soon and get a much better picture of what these injectors can do for us. But yeah, that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.